Hmm. Can you guys hear me okay? Is the sound coming across? Hi. Oh boy, the tech audio file file. Uh, is it, can you hear me all right? Yes? No? Hey. Hello? Can you guys hear me? Good. Good, Steve. Hey, Joseph. Okay. Hey, Mark. Um, I'm never sure until I get some feedback from you guys. It seems that every time, a lot of the times, hey Adam, um, the I'm always banged up. I always get cut or something. I had a band-aid on one time, and I say, man, I tell you, every time I have a live stream, hey, and that's something, Bruce. Um, well, today, oh, this is my microphone. You can see it. I got a special microphone. Um, Today, what I want to talk about is the hey, crappy. The things that I want to talk about today, Zeus, um, is the influencers and what I don't know if the term is set me off. Hey, Paul. Um, but rather, what happened was that I started thinking about it. I saw this thing called the Cinema Squad. Hi, Tom. Um, and that Breitling had, and the people in it, I think, was let me see, they had Brad Pitt, Adam Driver, Charlize Theron, and I think it was Daniel Wu. I think he was the fourth one. So they had these four people, and I was thinking two things. First of all, by the way, too, Breitling had a whole bunch of different what they called squads. I think one was they may even had one called the Aviation Squad. I know that. God, I forgot his name. The guy that was in Saturday Night Live, or not Saturday Night Live, but something like that was one of their spokesmen, and they were really into flying and pilots and stuff like that. So the question I have is that first of all, uh, when there's a query to a watch company of Travolta, John Travolta. Thanks, Steve. That's who I was trying to think of. Yeah, he's a real pilot too. That's one thing about. No matter what you think about him as an actor, he is a real pilot. But I don't know how much he's into watches, other than probably getting a lot of money for doing that. Okay, so here was the thing. Two questions I came up with, or two issues I thought would be sort of fun to kick around. Um, yeah, Breitling. Yeah, you're right, Mark. The you first of all, what influence does it have? I don't think it has any on me, and probably most collectors. It might have some on some. If you have you want to look like James Bond or something like that, and run out and get an Omega or Rolex or whatever they're wearing in their latest movie. Um, so the but the I guess is when I ask myself, well, who influences me? I know exactly who it is. A friend of mine who's a watchmaker and a former Grand Prix d'Horlogerie judge is one of them. He when he says something about it, I figure this guy knows what he's talking about. And on the other hand, I would think, well, maybe if there was something, somebody I really respected, like if they had, oh, I don't know. Oh, yeah, I know one. There was a few years ago, there was a magazine in Singapore, I think, called Revolution, and they had four of the top watchmakers, grandmasters watchmakers, and somebody asked me, I said, what watch would you recommend under $10,000? Hi, Alex. And let me see. One of them was Roger Smith. He recommended a Rolex. Another was Kerry Vuitton and he recommended a Parmigiani. Another was Laurent Ferrier, and he recommended a Rolex too, I think. And finally, there was Philippe Dufour, and he recommended a Nomos for under $10,000. And so I think, hi, Michael, and so the hey, Alex, the the whole thing is that yeah, these I think that certainly would influence me. Then I found out later on, I think that the Rolex that Roger Smith had was one that George Daniels had given him that had the coaxial escapement in it. So I don't know if that was the reason or not. It's a good watch. I mean, let's face it. Um, so in terms of influencing, one of the things that really surprised me, I got a watch that was for one reason. I wanted there was a movement in it I liked, and this was the Jacquet 736. I've talked about this before. And hey, flipping Zippo. And I took it up to my friend, I got this former judge, and I wanted to ask him about um God, what's his name? Well, his name was Jacquet. His last name was Jacquet, and he's the guy that had to go to jail. And so he was an interesting one. This was my outlaw movement, and it was in a Maurice Lacroix watch, which I sort of didn't have a great high opinion of. And he saw it. He said, Maurice Lacroix is one of those really under underjudged movements. So, wow, not movements, but watches. They're very well made watches. Now, for years, Maurice Lacroix had, they were simply putting ETAs in it or something else. And the something else was uh, a few of them had this Jacquet 736, which again became sort of a fun kind of thing to collect that was affordable. It was an unusual movement. A bunch of people said, "Oh, it was an ETA." This guy looked at it and said, "It's not an ETA. I boast that they put into a shape movement." So it was like, this is really a cool movement. Hey, Scott B. So um, the so that had an influence on me. So that's a good. The Maurice Lacroix was good. And I thought there were some of them that were good. There was another kind of thing too. Um, there's one that was designed in Cuba, Sobrino and Huevo, I think, or Sobrino y Huevo, something like that. And they're all ETA based watches, but they're very cool designs. And it's sort of another kind of thing I sort of fumbled into. Um, oh, yeah. Huevos y sobrinos in something that's it. Something like that. One of the two. It sounded like a beer name, so that was easy for me to remember. Cerveza. But these kinds of the funny kinds of things that influence me. Now, like I said, that's one person that certainly does influence me. But other other collectors, some collectors, yes, some no. The ones that have the least impact on me, I think, are people who are, and they're sweet people. They really are, but they're sort of like what I call brand Nazis. They like, you got to get this brand. And it doesn't matter what it is. Any kind of thing is that it's the brand that counts, as opposed to the watch. And some brands, yeah, just about everything they make is good. I mean, anything that came out of that Philippe Dufour did was, I think, really good. Now, having said all of this, Cofferel, I didn't say Rolex. People and ask something. Hi, Sonny. Um, hey, Richard. So it's yeah. Richard said, and some of the other people said, you get these things despite them, not because of them. You get a watch, you say, some, I don't know, raggedy ass actor says, "Oh, this is really a good watch." And you go, "Oh, you don't like that actor or you don't like that person for whatever reason, but you can get it anyway," which is, something. On the other hand, Brad Pitt was in a movie. He had a little role in it years ago. It's called True Romance, and had this weird movie, and he played this stoner, and he did such a good job of it. I've always liked him ever since. So um, it was sort of fun. So anyway, um, the the whole I guess the whole question is that what does influence this? And I wonder. I mean, they spend a lot of money on these people, so they must think that it has some kind of influence. But I wonder if it has any influence on collectors, and if not, um, yeah, okay. Hublot is a popular brand for celebrities in sports. Okay, yeah, I probably is, but I mean, it was like, you know, my NBA days are way past me. Uh, it's that kind of thing. And so then I'm thinking, well, what really does influence me? And I already mentioned this one guy who's a watchmaker, and of course that's going to have an influence. But then you sort of like start. What I found out is that I really sort of broaden my interest. For example, the outlaw movement I like. Oh yeah, that reminds me too. Uh, God, what's his name? I forgot his first name, but Jacquet, the guy who went to jail for stealing all of the cases and making phony watches. Hi, Asa. Hi, Decon. Uh, uh, that was an interesting thing. But then I found another thing. It was even more interesting. There's a movement assembler and movement maker called Concepto. Have anybody heard of them at all? Concepto? Anyway, well, I was looking them up, and they do two things that sound a lot like what Jacques SA did. Now, what was his name? I, I forgot his first name, but anyway, so Jacques was the guy that made what I call the outlaw movement, and so when I saw something that his son was running called Concepto, and so I thought, well, hey, maybe here you have this father son connection, and so that's sort of interesting, and so I've been looking at them and seeing what they're doing. And then I found out that they're as a movement maker, they're two halves. They're sort of, on the one hand, they're sort of a like upscale doing what ETA does. On the other hand, some of the stuff they do is based on ETA IBOSHs. Um, yeah, Steve, thank you. the finding the movements from the lesser known brand. But this is the other thing too. If there's no celebrity and there's no big push on a watch, and they're not terribly popular or even known, those are the ones that we as collectors have our best chance with. There was something, some guy said, oh, there was back around 2000, almost 20 years ago, when Philippe Dufour was making his first watches as an independent. I think he used to work at, oh, God, I think he worked at Patek Philippe for a number of years. And then he went out on his own and he had the simplicity and the duality. And those watches, I mean, people didn't know him that well. Hey, Apar. They didn't know him that well, and they picked it up for, forgot what it was. Like, it wasn't cheap, but it was nothing like it is today. And so that's one of the things that I think would be sort of a cool thing to do. There are no celebrities. There's people don't know him too much, and then here we are, um, starving, starving collectors. We're starving because we blow all of our money on watches. Um, Ozaki, yes, Harbring 2. That was one. I love my Harbring 2. By the way, too, this is another thing. I'm wearing my uh ah, Christian Vanderklaw. When I got it, it was almost new. I got it on a trade, and because it was almost new, I mean, like not even 6 months. It was still under warranty, and all of a sudden, the the moon phase stopped. I mean, it's Christian Vanderklaw, and the main part of it that to me was interesting was the moon phase, and so I sent it back to him in the Netherlands, and boy, did they do a good job. That thing was just better than a new watch. And the main movement in it is that Soprod A10, which was Seiko's first attempt to get into like high horology, sort of upscale movements. But the part that is most important to me was the Christian Vanderklaw um, moon phase movement. And so they sent me this. There was this little bag they sent after they fixed it up. There were all these little gears in it and everything. And but these things are bargains. There aren't very many of them, but uh, they sort of like they have they're like 5,000, and then they go up to 20,000. This is not the 20,000 one. But I think they're going to stop making them. So there may be some of those kicking around that are sort of fun. This is, trying to find some watches you like that everyone isn't after. Okay, so let's see what are you guys up to. Um, yeah, okay. There was something that you mentioned, the James Cameron dive. Who is the French guy that used to go underwater all the time? Jacques Cousteau. I think he had didn't he have a 5 fathoms or something like that? One of those things, or 50 fathoms watch. And he, now that would influence me. If he was wearing, I don't know, a Blancpain 50 fathoms or something else for diving, now that would be an influence. Now he happens to be a celebrity too. A Patek AP Patek became a lot more popular after celebrity endorsements. Okay, I believe it. I believe it 100%. Jack, I don't think it was Doxa, but I do love Doxas. I mean, Doxa divers, those orange ones. That if I ever got a diver and was actually going to get wet, that's the one I would get. I used to think Billy Joel wore an IWC, but I heard it was Frank Mueller. That could have been. Um, Brad Pitt, I read somewhere he picked up a $300,000 Patek Philippe. Well, you know, you're talking about a $300,000 anything. That's like sort of over the moon. Um, but on the other hand, I think I'd been more impressed if you'd picked up something by, like an independent designer, one of the new ones, somebody, in other words, who really knew more than the typical kinds of things about it. But it's people are so much influenced by that kind of stuff. I think we have to think of some way that we could be the influencers. Casso wore a Blancpain 50 Fathoms. Thanks, Scrappy. I wasn't sure. I knew it was one of those things. Now, see, that would influence me because Jacques Cousteau was a real diver. And he may not have known about watches, but he knew about watches to take underwater with you. That would be my thing. Even though I think a Dox is cooler because it's orange. Um, okay. Hi, beauty of scent. What's your take on AC3? I've what's that? It sounds like an air conditioner, number 3. I um, okay. Jennifer. Well, there, I tell you, you probably got a lot of hand-me-downs, Steve, that would be interested in. I don't know if he'd be interested in us, so. All right, so what are some ideas? Who is the most what type of person or persons would have most influence on you? Come on, you guys, now let's use your heads now. Who would be your the latest guy to go very deep is wearing an Omega? Okay. Who is that? Oh, wait a minute. Was that James Cameron? Now, someone has got to. Let's talk about the role of influencers. Should watch companies, instead of paying a lot of money to celebrities, should instead they go ahead and spend the money on movements? What do you think of that? Guys, a great watchmaker. Yeah, that's mine too. And your own research. Hey, Rumble Jungle. Yes, both. Think social media, YouTube change everything about. Mark, that's a good point. Hi, Vlad. Tom Ford, maybe. I don't, but I hate celebs and watches. Okay, Vlad. Oh, God. Adam, Stallone, and Panerai. Hmm. Hey, Rumble Jungle. Let's see. Oddly enough, you guys in your YouTube influence me more than any advertising. Oh, you're in trouble, man. Um, Moser is one that spends the money on their movements rather than endorsements. No kidding. Yes. Somebody today, I was talking to a friend who really knows watches inside and out, and he said that H. Moser is the best buy around because they're so undervalued, and I couldn't agree more. Um, yeah, I agree with that too. Oh, let's see. Would you consider adventures wearing watches more influential than the movie stars? Hey, Jack, I think that's a good point. And I was going to bring that up. That's one of they have all of these different groups for influencers. Since most of the stuff I like tends to be a little more formal, but if I was, an outdoorsy type, yeah, some guy who climbed up Mount Everest wearing a certain brand of watch. Yeah, that would be that would certainly have an influence. That was something I was going to ask too. If in terms of now that my NBA career is over, would a and I like certain kinds of sports. A professional football player, but on the other hand, you got to ask. I can really like a football player or a football team, and but what do they know about watches? And the answer is probably not a whole lot. Hey, Apar, what's up? Reminds me of Felix Baumgartner skydiving from space on. Oh yeah, on a Red Bull. Yeah. Hey, Paul, seeing the Rolex sub worn by Roger Moore in my first Bond movie. Yeah, no, something like that. Someone, you see a guy like, or who's the guy? Craig Daniels, I guess, is the latest one. So that kind of thing. Rolex's big selling point was Mount Everest. Was it? Okay. Um, I it's sort of like some of these things now. Yeah, so somebody takes it up to Mount Everest. One thing that Rolex still advertises was that girl who had one around her neck and swam across the English Channel. The thing that they don't tell you, she didn't make it all the way. She made it most of the way, and they finally had to fish her out and put her in a boat and row her back to shore. Uh, yeah, mass opinions. I man, the problem with mass opinions, 2 things. One, you don't wanna have a watch like everyone else, but one of the things that mass opinions sometimes do is they up the price. I don't know why. The thing is that, um, the whole notion of premiums, yeah, okay. Yes, SpaceX. Footballers wear Miller. I don't not sure about that. I always thought that was a beer. Okay, Roy Pie. Watch industry needs to invest in SpaceX. Astronauts are influences we haven't seen in a decade or two. A decade or two. It's been 50 years since they landed a guy on the moon. It's about that's a while. But that's not, that's a point. The good grief. The Omega Man on the Moon was a big one, and that did have an influence. Only celebrity who loves the hobby could have influence on me, John Mayer. Yeah, Sonny, that's a good point. Laurent Fourier, yeah, his stuff I like, but his stuff is really expensive, and it doesn't seem to go down too much. His stuff I like a lot. Hey, Paul, what's it? What watch would you keep from your collection if you could only have one? Oh man, I don't know. Um, I can think of at least 5 that I wouldn't give up no matter what. Hey, rich buddy. Um, autocorrect is messing with me. Or am I all right? Uh, autocorrect messes with everybody. Um, would it be driven by aesthetics or movement? Oh man, that's a good question, Paul. For me, the answer would be both. Hmm, I would say if I had to tilt it one way or the other, it would be an interesting movement that I could see. I don't. That's one of the things that um that I wish all watches had was the nice big exhibition one in the back. So anyway. Okay, well, listen, guys, it's just my my timer is just about up, so I'm gonna have to run. But I wanted to kick around some ideas about this so we could think about it, and maybe how we do it. Mickey Mouse, I own a few of his watches. Mickey Mouse, there you go, Adam. I own one too. All right. Well, listen. Tomorrow we have our collection review, and meantime, we'll talk to you later. Bye for now.